all about movement. Why it's not just good for the body, but essential for the brain and powerful for emotional development. Whether you're a parent, educator, or just trying to better understand the mind body connection, this one's for you. So let's stretch our thinking, get into motion, and explore why we all need to move to grow. And today I am here with the Future Proof Knowledge podcast, standing in for Alan O'Donoghue, who is currently doing some work for us. We need him on special assignment. But we have the rest of our team and some special guests here today. Today we have Tana Laura. We also have Lisa Fannin. And then two special guests. We have Olive Hickmott, a regular on the show, as you all know, and Fraser Carson today. So we'll start with some introductions. I'll first bring in Lisa Fannin for her introduction, and we'll move on down the line and we'll see where this thing goes to. Lisa, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks, Jay Sean. Yeah, so let's see. I have been working with this wonderful crew on future proof knowledge for quite some time. My background is in software development and technology. I've worked in various roles there, from software testing to leadership to project management, everything in between. Um, I also am a coach and I work with parents on online safety and online presence with their kids. And then, I'm a full time mom and all the other things in between. So that's me.
That's excellent. That's excellent. All righty. We'll come back to you with some more questions, Lisa. We're gonna next introduce to the stage Miss Tana Laura. Tana, how are you doing today? Tell us about what you do with us here at FPK, and how's your week been?
It's good. I didn't know we were doing this. I'm like, oh no, I'm on the spot.
Hot seat, hot seat.
I know. Well, I just do our marketing. I just do. I love FPK. I'm a cosmetologist. I do, like I said, I do our marketing. Geez, I was a full time mom. All my kids are grown and gone. I, geez, what do I do? Um, I'm more of our creative, I think, niche in FPK. I've been with y'all how long now? 3 years? Has it been 3 years? Or been a little longer?
A little longer than 3 years now. Yeah, we've been grinding.
So I'm here in the background more, which is why I'm kind of like a little nervous always when I get on the mic because y'all are all professionals at this, all has been at this. Lisa does a lot with Alan on the mic all the time. And Jay Sean, you're pretty good at this now. So I'm just here kicking along, helping all out in the background, doing the um, posts. And it's kind of what I do, just over here doing that. Not much else.
Well, to be successful, it's not just who's in the forefront, it's the background that supports everything. So without you, we wouldn't be where we're at today. So it is much appreciated and we love having you on board. So let's move on to our regular guest we have here, Miss Olive Hickmott. Uh, Tell us about yourself and how you've been doing this past week, Miss Olive.
Um, I'm I'm a health and learning coach. I've been working with neurodiverse students for the last 25 years, and I is that sounding all right on that microphone to you?
Sounds great.
Oh, fine. And as I say, I've been coaching people and running training courses for all that period of time. And this week, I have just produced what's called a visual pedagogue and curriculum for visual thinkers. So if anybody's got children or themselves who are visual thinkers, then it might be worth you're more than welcome to contact me because we now have a really good definition of why we do it, what we do, and how it can be measured.
Aren't you a busy bee? Every week it's
Yep,
something new.
exactly.
All right. And our special guest today is Phaser Carson. How are you doing? And tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Hi, thanks to be. Yeah, as I said, my name is Fraser Carson. I'm actually a very old friend of Alan's. We did go to high school together many years ago. So I've been really interested in watching him kind of, and you guys all pulling this together, starting to look at different kind of approaches to education. That's a little bit of my background too. I do come from a sports psychology perspective. So I look at sport and exercise psychology, working with athletes at all levels and all sports. So from recreational level all the way up to some athletes who've gone to Olympic Games and World Championships, and looking at how they can manage more effectively on the court, in the pool, wherever it's going to be. But also dealing a lot with education side. So I actually lead a program in sport and exercise science at Lunex University. It's a University of Applied Sciences based in Luxembourg. So we are constantly looking at a changing demographic as well at the moment, and starting to really think about how we are changing our approach to education. And I said, I've been listening intently to the last couple of podcasts that you've done, speaking to Alan quite a bit about this, because I think there's some of this kind of things are really, really important for particularly young people kind of starting to come through now. We need to change how we educate, and this is one way to do it. So I'm delighted to be here.
Excellent, and thank you for joining us. Such talent with all the people we have on the panel today. So today's topic is how being active shapes the brain and emotions. And for me, it sounds very, of course, it just sounds like that's common sense, but it's not so common for everybody. But I experienced what we're talking about this morning. Had a late start and I rolled out of bed, had no energy, couldn't think, couldn't figure out what my left slipper was versus my right slipper. And it wasn't until I actually got up, got a little bit of movement going on, shook the dust off my bones, that my brain started working and I was able to start processing thoughts. So this ties into what we're talking about today. Movement in school. We kind of touched on in one of our past episodes with visual learning. So with visual learning and physical movement, tying those two together, when we're physical and we're doing things, we wake up. It's really hard to roll out of bed and just jump right into work because your brain's not clear. So I'm going to move back to you, Fraser Carson. When it comes to the stuff you do in sports, how important and how do you address movement, not in the sport itself, but in the preparation to get your mind right or to get your body right and your emotional regulation?
Yeah, I suppose that actually, if we look at the science behind it, there's a whole lot of research around psychology of exercise, and we know as well that by being more physically active, we're shaping our minds to help us in really positive ways by increasing things like assertiveness, increasing our confidence. Exactly as you said yourself, you kind of your mood picks up a little bit more. We feel a little bit better about ourselves. At the same time, then we're reducing some of those kind of negative kind of components and kind of more that anxiety, even confusion, depression. So we know that being more physically active is really, really useful for those kind of components. I think the other thing that we can start to see as well is that exercise in itself is really helpful for the learning process. So we know that we can start to learn more by being more physically active. And I'm not a neuroscientist at all, but my little bit of understanding of neuroscience starts to come in and saying that the actual part of our brain that is activated when we exercise or when we're more physically active is the same part of our brain that is active when we are learning. But actually getting us to do little bits of things. So bits of movement doesn't need to be huge amount, doesn't need to kind of high intensity kind of things, but just small bits to actually just start to get us going and start that processing to help the learning process in particular.
Excellent. I find that to be so true because I'm worthless until I get to moving around and getting my brain waves circling. I'd like to move to Olive for a quick moment here. So when we're talking about movement, and as you know, with FPK, we're all about neurodiverse minds. And when we're looking at students in classes, can you touch on or explain a little bit how movement can help students of any age, um, help them to get into the right learning state in order to be able to retain information or even help with emotional regulation, how that correlates in a class setting.
Yeah, and of course, in a class setting, a traditional class setting, we all know what that was like. It was like rows of desks, and you all had to sit in your place. And we've got the education system saying, if you can't sit still in your place, you're not ready to learn. Well, actually, that's not particularly true. Um, I'll just tell you a story about. I specialise in visualisation, so people can. Um, Neurodiverse people have so often got really great mental images in their heads, and um, but we don't always transfer them into learning so that we actually keep them for learning. And I remember a little girl once who I saw once, and she could not sit still, absolutely not. She was a nightmare in class. And so I said the next time I was going to see her, which was a week later, she was going to the gym before she saw me. And so I said, okay, I'll meet you outside the gym, which is in my locality. And I said, we're going to walk around the field. So we walked around the field. And whereas in the first week, I asked her to visualize a cat, and she couldn't possibly do that. The second week, when I was walking around the playing fields with her, she could do it perfectly. She was looking up at the sky. She was talking about what the shape of the clouds were and what they meant to her. And she was so clear about what she was using mental images for. And I always remember that story because I go, keeping her still was not going to achieve anything with her.
I got to remember to unmute my mic. There we go. That's excellent, excellent story. Let's move over to Tana. So you do a lot of our marketing and social media and things of that nature. Is there any types of physical activity you feel like you have to do, or is there any activities you encourage your kids to do before they do something that's going to test their mental or emotional selves?
Like a sport. I always thought it was important that all my children do a sport because it kept them busy. I always thought it kept children, it gave them a purpose of doing something. I thought it taught a discipline. It taught teamwork. It gave them a purpose of being, together. It just taught so many things. And, I think also too, as a parent, you know, one sport doesn't always stick. You have to keep giving children options until they find something that sparks their interest. Um, and also it teaches them that, time management. It teaches them that you have to work with people. It teaches so many things. And then sports, it's something that you can do forever. And my son, I mean, he owns his own tennis academy now. My other son, he's a lifetime runner. There's so much you can do with sports, and yeah, they do. All of them. It's very important to, we always had that element in our life to keep physical. I always took them to the park. We always did that. We always would take them to the pool just because we always knew that that was an important element. So yeah, I always put that into element into our lifestyle. I wish traveling, you see how overseas it's just part of their lifestyle. How, you have to catch the bus, the metro. And, here you have to put it like, okay, now I have to get, you get off of work and okay, now I have to walk for an hour. I have to go to the gym or whatever. And I'm so envious of going overseas and like, oh, well, there's so many thin people over there because they, it's in their lifestyle. I wish that was here more. I'm very envious of that.
Absolutely. And you see it everywhere. I mean, I always thought it was odd when I was younger and I would see on the news some of the Asian companies and their corporations and stuff. And you see a whole plant of factory workers out on the factory floor doing squats and sit ups and jumping jacks and stand in place exercises. And I always thought, well, that's just weird. You don't go to work to do that. But as I've grown up, as I've learned the reasoning behind it, it all makes sense. You know, you get your staff to get that energy out before they start their shift. They're more clear headed. They're able to get in the factory, produce things quicker, and just better employees at that point. Um, Lisa, what are some of the things that you've noticed with your own children where movement has been a key factor in their success, whether it's in education or whether it's their emotional state?
Hey, yeah, thanks. So we're have been a pretty physically active household. Like my husband is a hiker. He goes to the gym without fail. And so we took pretty much a similar approach to what Tana said in terms of with both of our girls, we didn't push them to do something they didn't like, but we did push sports, like participating particularly in a team sport. So my oldest daughter, she's 22, was not a kid who particularly loved sports. We joked, she's an indoor girl. But we encouraged her, especially as she got to middle school and high school, like pick a team sport, give it a try. So, she tried different things on as well. She did cross country in middle school. She played tennis in high school. And for her, like, it was a way to meet people. It was picking up a skill. She was making us happy a little bit. With my youngest daughter, she absolutely adores sports. Like when she was young, we actually had to pare her back. Like you can't try all of these at once. Let's pick one or two and go out and try them. And as time's gone on, she's settled into softball, and that is such a huge part of her life right now. And what is interesting about that is, she is neurodivergent, so she does have a lot of social anxiety. And one of the things that I love about what softball has done for her, it's so much more than the physical activity. It has given her the space to work on social skills. There are things when I look back when she started playing softball and, you're walking up to the plate and there's a runner coming back and they're passing you and the runner puts her hand up, high five. And Emery would just kind of look at it and then let her walk by because it didn't click for her that there should be a response. And these are things that we worked on. Like, okay, yep, you know what? This is a gesture of camaraderie, of team, being a team player. You're celebrating, like hand up. And it was work. Like that was work for her. But over time, it became natural. And now, high five, she's got that down. It's allowed her to learn, like even cheering from the dugout, connecting with people that she normally wouldn't. She started high school last year and she joined the high school softball team and she was so nervous about it. I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I'm okay with this. And she made friends before school started, which is something that in a new environment for her and new routines is so challenging. So that like team sports for her has been such a gift because it has allowed her to build other skills that I don't know if even in school she would have had the space to really work on those things without feeling ashamed or feeling less than or feeling, like I'm weird. So that's been wonderful for her. And, you know, I used to be a runner. I found for me, I would go out and run every day at lunch from work, take a break, go run at lunchtime. And it was such a wonderful, like calming, it had such a calming effect on me. Any stress I was feeling out the window, right? You put it out of your mind, you're there, you're in nature, you're running, you're moving your body. The chemical reaction that happens after you go for a run is better than any, like, I think, any medication they could put me on for anxiety. It's awesome. And even in the place where I am now, where I'm hanging out here in Kansas City, going through radiation for a brain tumor, I go for a walk with my husband 3 times a day. and we get out, we move our bodies, that has brought so much comfort to me, to us. And you read all the, the studies, that also helps me with my, you know, healing process through this journey. So anyway, I could talk about sports all day long. Mute me and unmute yourself, Jason.
There we go. Back at it again. The muting game. So Phaedra, I'm very excited to dig in a little bit deeper into what it is you do and how you perceive being active with education, and if there's any significant situations that you've been involved in or witnessed that showed how important the physical is when it comes to education or mental, emotional regulation.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, and I think I've seen a bit of a change in this in our student population. So we're university students, so they're 18 plus, but I think in the last couple of years there has been a bit of a huge generational kind of shift about how they approach learning, and I find it quite interesting where I am in the center of Europe. There is I think the school education system is very much the students sit there, get told what to memorize, and then try to regurgitate that for an examination and then get through. And while potentially their performance is quite good, the actual learning kind of component, I think, really is lacking from there. So we are conscious now of actually getting our students to be much more physically active to engage in that learning process itself. I said, you're talking about sports, and we know this from sports performance, and particularly in high performance level, we do, all our training is kind of walkthroughs. It's kind of video learning based. There's lots of different interactions in the learning kind of process. So I think that's really a key part of what we actually start to see. And we do have a number of students kind of come through from various different backgrounds. And we do know then getting them more, well, even just getting the hands-on practice is really useful for them. So they're actually starting to be involved in the learning themselves. So they actually start to feel what it's like, whether that's as a participant, where they might be doing some kind of maybe some basic fitness testing or training methods. So they can actually start to see how the body works. And we find in this particularly for our students, when they start to look at anatomy and physiology, that they can't necessarily learn it from a textbook, but then if they get involved and they're actually participating in that kind of process, they're okay, I can see where that muscle's moving. I can see what's actually happening in my body to help me understand that kind of process. So I think that's been one of the big kind of changes that we've moved to.
That's interesting. Follow-up question to that. So you work at universities, you coach. Have you noticed, I'm just trying to think back to when I was in high school. There was a particular year between my 11th and 12th grade year, right before my graduating year, where all of the sports teams, we typically would practice. We'd have basketball, baseball, track and stuff. All that was last period class. So you went your whole school day, and then that was the last thing you did for the day. You did your sports. Rolling into that last year, they flipped it around. Again, something as a kid didn't understand why they did it. Now as an adult, I get it. So what they were finding is that when the students, the track club, they always were first period. They'd come to school and they'd run. Well, looking at grades and focus in class, the track students were always more focused in their second, third, and fourth period classes, where those who were in sports that were at the end of the day, their focus wouldn't pick up until right about before their sports class. So by switching the order around and getting that physical activity out, you were able to see a difference in the way the athletes were able to perform in class throughout the day, because they've already used all their endorphins and they've been on the field and they've done all of that. So in what you're doing and where you're working at, do you see see any of that, or has there been any push to kind of reshape the way it's delivered and the timing in which it gets delivered?
Yeah, there's actually with our students in particular, a lot of them want to be physical education teachers. So we are helping them to understand the kind of best methods of teaching practice and pedagogy and these kind of things. And it's been interesting over the last couple of years. We've really taken an interest in a lot of the Scandinavian approach to education, and particularly in that physical education. And it's exactly what you've just said there, Jason. They've actually moved. So the very first hour of class is physical education, so physical activity. So they're doing lots of different kind of things, and they're seeing results improving dramatically as a result of it. So, and we're consciously trying to do these kind of things as well, putting in things like active breaks, getting people more physically active. We know if we can start to get the blood flowing through the brain, the cognitive functioning improves. So it's definitely some of the things that we actually start to see. We see the same thing that I've said when I've worked in high performance sports environments. When we start to do a lot of the kind of physical training, we'll do some kind of lighter exercise things in the morning or early, and then come into more of a tactics training kind of session. So then actually, because the athletes then are a bit more focused. And you said, I'm not sitting there, I'm not listening in whatever class it is, I'm not necessarily interested in, but I'm active in that process. And now when it comes to other classes that I may not be as interested in, I'm still have those kind of positive kind of feelings. And we see as well that even that mood state, it can last for 3-4 hours after a simple bout of moderate exercise. So kind of 20-minute exercise, it just gets you feeling much more positive about things. So you're more confident and therefore more willing to engage in the subject. And as I said, some of the stuff coming out of the as I said, the Scandinavian system, I think in Finland in particular, with that change of putting physical education in early, is really seeing some huge differences.
That is excellent. That is excellent. Olive, in what you do, kind of building off from what we just heard from Phaser, how do you approach getting into that physical state to get into the learning state? Do you judge the individual? Is it when someone comes into a class, you just hit them with physical? Do you ease yourself into it? How do you make that approach? Because even for an athlete, before you get physical, there's a preparation.
Yep, and actually we're doing more and more work in early years, which is actually preschool. So it's the really tinies, 0 to 5 years old. And I dug out of a quote for you this morning about the Montessori schools, because the Montessori schools are all embedded in movement. And the quote I found was, movement is an integral part of a Montessori method. Children move freely through prepared environments. These are really youngsters, choosing a shelf by which to select an activity and a table in which to work. Movement is deeply tied into social opportunities. And so in the very youngest, the Montessori was leading in this decades ago. And what we're now seeing is our regular schools doing more and more of this in primary school and even and particularly in preschools. So the message is getting out there that people need to actually move. And I've always, when I coach somebody, I've never really asked them to sit still. You know, I've had them walking around all over the place. I've had them out in the garden. I've had them doing all sorts of things. You know, I don't really focus on they have to sit still, because that's not the way they learn best. And it's well known now, and it's creeping up. But when we get up to primary and secondary, it's much more rigid. You know, that message hasn't got through to that particular audience, unfortunately. Despite, I mean, I feel really worried that we've got children now who can walk around in the early years, and as they get older, they have to sit still more. And so that seems to be a violation of them as well.
All right, that's excellent. Okay, so we're at about the halfway point here. For all of our listeners, today we are talking about how being active shapes the brain and emotions. We're here with Tana Laura, Lisa Fannin, Phaedra Carson, Olive Hickmont, and myself, Jay Sean Mills. I'm going to roll into the next segment here. We're still talking about the same thing, and I wanted to pose the question, how do we implement physical activity at home with our children, and what foundations can we build at home to prepare them for school? We can't always trust what our educators are doing when we're not there. We don't know how they're delivering once we drop our kids off in most cases. So what can we do as parents to prepare our children before we drop them off at the school or before the school picks them up to have them in the best learning state? What type of small physical things can we start to teach our kids and get them engaged in? I'm going to move to Carson first, then we'll come to Lisa, Tana, and back to Olive on this one. So we're looking for pre-game. What can we do for our kids to get them in the right state of mind before we walk out the door and get them on the bus? Any small tips, tricks, or activities that you can recommend? And this is to you, Phaedra. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best person to ask this. I don't have kids myself, so it's probably a little bit more tricky to say the practicalities of some of these kind of things when you're having to organize kids all over the place in the morning to get out to school before a certain time. But for me, what I'm thinking a little bit about is more how to get them involved in understanding that physical activity is really important for them and taking away some of the emphasis of the competition of sport. So it's about understanding that a few of you have mentioned it already about the different kind of skills that we can start to learn from it. So you can actually start to engage in communication, understanding kind of leadership, understanding different kind of ways to work with other people. So I think that's the kind of importance of putting that emphasis on. It's not necessarily about winning everybody, beating everything, and it's actually about a process of starting to develop and improve your kind of skills. And I think by just being that little bit of physically active, doing a few simple kind of things, it does help us alert our minds a little bit. And it's probably, as I said, maybe a little bit more difficult with children as you're preparing them to come out to school, but actually starting to encourage them to maybe do a bit more a structured approach to doing some kind of basic exercise just to help warm the brain up, for want of a better term.
And thank you for that tip there. And to you, Lisa, what is it that you try to get your kids, or how do you approach it with your kids to get them mentally prepared for their journey as they go out into the world each day?
Yeah. So first off, just a really quick reflection back on what we were talking about previously. I have to give some props to the Boulder school districts here, because they have done a tremendous amount, I feel like, in the last 5 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, to incorporate movement into schedules, particularly especially with the, kindergarten through 5th graders, where every morning they start with movement. They literally, as an entire school, are outside and they're doing some sort of like exercise as a large group. Everybody's moving their body. And then they take breaks throughout the day to do that, which I think is awesome. It keeps them moving. It like re-energizes them. I know for my daughter's a fidgeter. So they have chairs for her to kind of sit in that move, and she can keep her body moving while she's learning, while she's in the classroom. I think that's an awesome thing as well. But in terms of like getting them ready for the day, man, that's such a challenge. I will say, my youngest she is about to be a sophomore in high school. Last year, her first class of the day was yoga, and she loved it to no end. She was excited on days she had yoga in the morning. She would go. She's like, Mom, I walk out and I feel so ready. I feel ready for my day. Like that class at that time had such a significant impact on her. And of all the things that I thought she would find joy in, yoga was not the one. She loves it. But she's also a kiddo. Like our whole lives kind of revolve around her softball career at the moment. Like we are all softball all the time. She plays hard. She loves the game. She wants to learn. She's competitive. So, if anything, like I think for getting her ready for her day at school, especially in the fall, it's all right, you got softball today. Like you got softball practice tonight, and that gets her amped up and going. But we don't really have a great morning routine, if I'm being completely honest. Now, my oldest daughter, who is 22, now that she's through college and she's like out into the adult world, goes to the gym in the morning like a champ, gets up, goes to the gym, does her workout. We don't have to push her anymore like we did when she was younger. She's found her own stride with that and she enjoys it. And that's something as a parent, you're happy to see, it's just setting them up for a good day.
Yeah, getting kids ready on my end is quite a pain. Uh, let's see here. We're gonna move over to Miss Tana Laura. I'm trying to get used to this mic thing there. Tana Laura, how are you doing? And same
Well,
question to you.
well, one of my children, we did yoga in the morning. The other one, we did stretches. Having sports, I had a lot of early mornings, track meets. We had to get up and drop offs and early morning tennis drop offs and cheer drop offs and oh golly. So, there was a lot of getting up early, preparing, toast and juice just to get them out early. So it was a lot of stretches in those. But I mean, it wasn't even so much that you had to prepare them in the morning. Um, Having some sort of physical activity with them throughout the day or the week or whatever. I did yoga classes with my children, just going out and throwing the ball with your children, getting them in some sort of routine that way, I think, just being active with them. And for a while, I was a single mom. And if, you can't, people are like, well, I can't get them in a program or whatever. There's resources that you can do just as long as you have your children, I think, in some sort of, if you can't get it provided through the school, like we're saying, school sports or whatever, there are other ways that you can help your children, get them in some sort of programs that can help, that if you're qualified, get them in a program, help your children, set them up in some sort of physical activity with them, and do it with them. And the best way, of course, is to lead by example, be involved with them. And of course, your children love that as well. So I think that it's not just a morning routine, it's throughout the day, throughout the week. As long as you're there with them, showing them, I think is best as well.
That is so true because every morning I've got to show my kid exactly what I want him to do. He's a runner. He's going to get up, he's going to run. And I used to be like, hey, slow it down. But now I let him run and I push him to run. And I take him outside and I let him run outside before he gets in his bath. So that he's has autism. He's very high strung. So letting him get that energy out, take his bath, have some more run time before he gets on the bus usually transitions into a better day. It's the mornings where I may be running late and I screw up his day because I don't give him the chance to get that physical activity out. And then I hear back from the teacher that his morning was an absolute mess. He was dysregulated. So it's also on us to make sure that we have our crap together so that it doesn't fall over onto our children. And that's one of my biggest challenges. I want to move over to Olive here and kind of change the question just slightly. What is it that you do to prepare yourself personally, physically, to get your mind ready to deal with the neurodiverse individuals that you work with on a day in, day out basis?
Um, I think, first of all, I'd say I've been walking I mean, I'm older than you guys, so I'm not doing such violent exercise. But I've been walking at least a mile, if not 2 miles, every morning. And I have learnt that walking before breakfast is better than walking after breakfast. And funny enough, I started that when COVID came because our Prime Minister of the day said the only time you can go out is for an hour a day during lockdown. And so I was cheering all the time, really. And so that's what I do. My kids, of course, have left home now, so I don't get involved in that apart from walking the dogs. And but one of the things I do think about sport is quite often the neurodiverse kids are struggling with something in school. Sometimes they can be really good at sport. Sometimes they can not be really good at sport. But I always consider that all these kids have a spiky profile. Some things they're really good at and some things they're not really good at. And so actually picking out something that they're really good at in the sports arena that they can actually get enthusiastic about, I think has got so many benefits. And the other thing is, the best thing you can do is calm down before you meet a neurodiverse person. Because if they're probably very prone to picking up on your energy, so if you're stressed, they're going to be 10 times worse. So that's the most important thing to do.
Excellent.
Jason, can I comment on that one real quick?
Absolutely, jump in.
Yes, I love this one, and like I have learned this and felt this personally. I'm an outgoing person. I'm also I'm a very I don't know. I've lost the word for it, but I like a good competition. But with my daughter, like absolutely, she loves sports and she is good at it. And I know that neurodiverse kids don't always fit that. They don't always fit that, what they're looking, what is being looked for. But she's very good at it and she's put in the work for it. But if we put too much pressure on her, even with cheering or yelling or drawing attention, she is so mad. She is out. Like, you have to be quiet. Don't coach from the stands. No, mom and dad, don't talk. And I love it. It's always a reminder. I'm like, all right, yep, we're here for you. Yay. But we got to take ourselves out of the situation because then anxiety just goes whoop, right up to the top. Yeah. So excellent point.
Oh yeah, that's so true. My son run, he can do his thing, can be active, but you start, oh man, you're doing a good job. He's like, no, just get away. Just, I don't need you right now. I'm doing my thing. I don't care how good or bad I'm doing. I don't need your comment. You just go about you. Let me do me, and that's the way things are. Fraser, you work a lot with athletes. What are some real world examples of student transformation that you've seen through sport in the years you've been doing what you do?
Yeah, you see lots of it every year, every day, almost. You see students developing like that. I'll touch actually also on a point before the others have been talking about with sports performance and particularly with neurodiverse individuals. I think one of the things I've done in the past is actually supported one of my colleagues who was coaching one of the national basketball teams for intellectually disabled athletes, as they're called. And these people are highly functioning, and I think that's the bit that some people kind of forget. They might learn slightly differently, but they can be highly functioning in the sports environment continuously, and they can perform in regular kind of competition sports all at the same time. So we see these kind of things kind of coming through. But I think then the important bit is for us to start to think about how we engage those people and how we encourage them to be more active, be more physically active, whether that's in sports at a high performance level or just participating in sports just for their own kind of learning and their own kind of mental health and well-being kind of components. So I think that's a really important kind of part. I'm not sure if I fully answered your question there or not, but
an answer's an answer. Hey, I'm a rookie at this. I don't even know if I remember my question, so I'm sure you got it right. All right.
You're not a rookie, Jay Sean. You're the ultimate host.
So, my son has autism. I believe he would be a gold medal track star, if not for the fact that in trying to coach him to stay in a lane or to follow the circle around the track, he can't do those things. Well, I won't say he can't. He chooses not to do those things. He's a free runner. I really want him to do track this coming year. He's in summer school right now. A couple more weeks he'll be in school. I want him to run track, but I don't want to discourage him from running by trying to make running structured. Right now, I can take him to the field and he'll run for 2 hours, literally 2 hours nonstop, 100 yards back and forth, run to the sand pit, jump in the sand, throw some sand in the air, back on the field, just 2 hours nonstop till I'm tired and I make him stop. And I'm afraid if I force him to stay between the lines on the track and to follow me around the loop, that'll take the enjoyment that he has out of it. Olive, what are some ways a parent can try to restructure something you see your neurodiverse child is good at or enjoys? How can we slowly transition that into maybe a skill for him? Like for me, my fear is that I'll make it structured and he just won't want to do it anymore and he'll be mad and won't like to run. How can I approach that in a supportive way without putting undue stress on a neurodiverse mind, if that makes sense?
I mean, if he's so good at running, can you not do free running? We have here, the London Marathon, for example, which that one is probably a bit over the top for him because it would be too many people. But there is smaller ones going on. We actually have what do they call it? Park runs every Sunday morning. People are running all over the country in park runs, and so we have one that's 2 miles in one direction and one that's a mile in another direction. And people go along every week and do park runs. There is no, I don't know whether they worry about who wins at all, but they certainly don't run in tracks. And so I think I think this is with neurodiversity. It really is important for the people around the child, student, whatever they are, to help them work out what will work for them. And as I say, I think something like park runs would be a good migration for them.
Can I give you some advice, Jishan?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
I agree with Olive said. Like maybe put him in like some 5K runs or do something like not structured but sort of structured. My son, who's a tennis, who owns his own tennis academy, he was introduced to tennis when he was 8. And he did tennis, did football for a little bit. He was still in tennis when he was a junior in tennis. High school. He was just burned out, and he was just like, I quit. He was captain of his tennis. He was just like, I'm tired of it. I don't want to do it. And we were like, no. And he was ranked 142 in Texas. I mean, we thought we were going to go to like Junior Wimbledon, and we were like, no, we were so upset. But everybody was like, let him go on this hiatus. He needs to do it. You don't want to pressure him. And so he eventually came back around, and he went to the Navy, he went to college, and he was always playing tennis. And now he owns his own tennis academy. But we didn't pressure him. We didn't want to put that pressure on him. And he eventually came back. So I agree with Olive. Put him in something that he can maybe adapt to his version, and you can still keep him in it, but it's not gonna feel like pressure to him. And he will find his way. It can circle back. And that's what you do.
Jay-Sean, come to Boulder. Memorial Day weekend, we have a 10K race called the Boulder. It's the biggest 10K in the United States. It is complete and total chaos. You can pretty much run wherever you want to run, but there is something happening all along the entire path. There's belly dancers. You can do a slip and slide. There's people handing out bubble gum. It is hard to put into words the experience. It's a great life experience, and it's a wonderful thing to do as a family, because kind of anything goes, but your son could just run however he wants to run. Guarantee he'd have a great time.
Yeah.
And we'll hang out with you.
Yep, he's going to be doing some running this year, one way or the other. Well, since we're on this topic, I'm going to jump over to Phaser. What are some actionable tips for parents, teachers, and individuals to add movement into daily life? What are some things that we can recommend to our listeners? Little small steps that we can start taking now to start getting our children or ourselves into a more active lifestyle to help our mental and physical selves.
Faces on mute.
Sorry, I think I missed some of that kind of question. Actually, I got off. My understanding, I think you were talking about what advice can we give to get people to be more physically active. Was that?
Yeah. What types of small actionable tips can you make recommendations to our listeners today that parents or individuals can start doing? Micro steps, just kind of ease their way into it, to start getting that healthy lifestyle, to start getting the neurons moving in their brains each day on a small scale that we can build on. And I'll go around to each one of you and we'll see if we can't build this into a nice resource for our listeners to check off and start improving the way they use physical activity or the way they introduce their children to physical activity.
I think one of the things for me is actually changing the emphasis on what we want the end result to be, and actually getting people to learn and to participate. And I think we then need to change whether that's teachers or coaches or these kind of people, that when you're playing sport at 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, even 16 years of age, it doesn't need to be so competitive. It's about the kind of the development and the learning. And potentially, I think even as parents, for me, I think there's always one thing that could be done, as that question you always ask your kid after they've finished a sports game. And it shouldn't be, did you win? It probably should be, how did you perform today? Or did you put in lots of effort? So I think it's just changing that mindset a little bit. It'd be a really important one for me.
Very important point. Yep. Very important point. We do need to take the pressure of winning off from children. It's not about winning until you're at the Olympic level. Until then, it should be about how well you performed, how well you've learned your skill, and most importantly, from my standpoint, how much fun did you have on the field or the court today? And if you had fun, that's going to make you want to come back the next day and do it over again and build on those skills. How about you, Olive? What?
I'll give you one really simple one.
Excellent.
Walk to school.
What was
and
that?
walk to school when you're in primary and walk back. My kids always walk to school. Um, Even when they were not big enough to walk to school, they were in a buggy. So they always walked. And I just realised we've only got a primary school in the village that we live in, but the primary school has now got a track that goes around the sports field where they go out twice a day and do the track. And the other thing that does is not only does it give them some exercise, it also gets them to talk to each other because they probably wouldn't walk around the track in total silence. So they're doing a bit of community building as well.
Well, I'm glad times have changed because from what I hear, my grandparents lived in a geographical oddity. They walked uphill to school and home from school in the snow every day. I don't know how they did it, but
Uphill both ways.
uphill both ways in the snow. I never understood it, but that's what I was always told. So I'm glad I don't have to walk uphill both ways. Tana, any tips from you?
I think what y'all said. It's not about winning. People need to teach their children to lose gracefully. That you can learn just as much from losing as you can winning, if not more so. Because there's signs even at like baseball fields where parents, there's not an NFL person here. There's nobody recruiting your children. Parents get more involved in that than the children at times. I mean, one thing I did I put both of my younger sons in this basketball league because they did not keep score. They just played the game. And that was my draw to that because it was all little teams, but they just played the game because they were teaching skills and camaraderie and just how to play the game, and I loved that. And it was funny because at one point the coaches and the activity center was getting pressure from the parents to try and keep score. And I was just like, no, don't do that. This is why I put my children in this, because we're not keeping score. This is just for the children to learn life skills, to build, this on how to just be kids and learn and play and, So they did not, thankfully. I hope they didn't. My kids are all grown. But, teach your children that it's okay to lose. You have to learn to lose because it happens. So that would be my tip. And don't pressure them. Don't pressure them. Oh, and also keep putting your kids in as many sports as possible until they find one that they like, because it is going to take probably more than once. Have patience.
Absolutely. And with that, we're getting close to the end of our podcast here. I would probably say, commenting on what Tana left us with, is also when you're playing a sport, there's multiple competitions going on. You've got to focus on what's your competition. Are you there to do your best? Because you can lose a game, you can lose an event, and you can still win the game that you went in there trying to play. If you're trying to, for a track star, you might not win the gold medal. And I say this because I have a brother who's been to the last 3 Olympics in triple jump. He hasn't won the gold medal yet, but he's won by just making it to the Olympics. And that was a win worth talking about. It's not the medal you take home, the trophy you take home. Find out what it is you're trying to win from each game you play, and you can be a winner despite what the score is, as long as you know what the metric that you're playing for is. And with that, folks, I don't know if I did this podcast in the proper format, but that is going to be a wrap for today's episode of the Future Proof Knowledge Podcast. Remember, every time we move, whether it's walk, a wiggle, A wild game of tag. We're not just burning energy, we're building brains, balancing emotions, and shaping stronger learners. If today's insights moved you, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and connect with us online at fpkpodcast.org. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and don't forget to move. Everybody, have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.